Talking about here on my channel right now. It's all about Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively's.
As the host opens the show promising every chaotic headline for your rush hour ride home, he dives straight into the day's exploding mix of scandals, leaks, and political meltdowns, beginning with the chaos surrounding Candace Owens and moving quickly into a bizarre new revelation about Charlie Kirk's assassination case, where new reports claim that FBI Director Kash Patel caused a scene upon landing in Provo, refusing to exit his aircraft unless he was provided with an official FBI raid jacket, specifically one that fit perfectly and included Velcro patches for his name, which forced agents already overwhelmed by the investigation to scramble for a medium-sized jacket belonging to a female FBI agent just to satisfy his ego. This incident adds fuel to critics calling Patel incompetent, especially after earlier controversies like using the FBI jet for trips to see his girlfriend perform and taking credit for a capture that happened only because the suspect turned himself in. Meanwhile, the host pivots to Candace Owens, who is set to go live later in the day, but whose orbit is already burning as major conservative figures, from Turning Point USA to Daily Wire, distance themselves from her, with commentators like Vinny Oshana openly saying she has burned every bridge she's ever had and questioning whether she has any real allies left besides Tucker Carlson. The host notes that many critics aren't attacking her politics but the constant drama that surrounds her, comparing it to that one friend who is always convinced someone is out to get them, and eventually you realize they might be the problem. Candace fires back online with her trademark sarcasm about Zionist tears. But the criticism remains. Alliances fade, fights erupt, and her circle seems to shrink by the month. Still, her cultural power is massive. Millions watch her streams, millions track her theories. Even those who think her ideas are outlandish admit she commands attention, with commentators like Colonel Kurtz acknowledging that Candace may have changed the audience rather than the other way around. The host clarifies he isn't endorsing her conspiracies, but acknowledges that many people follow them because conspiracy culture has become entertainment mixed with fear, especially when some past conspiracies like MKUltra turned out to be true. A new viral video allegedly from a French intelligence whistleblower tries to validate Candace's claim that the French government hired assassins to target her, but the host refuses to promote it, saying it's likely fake, voice-modulated nonsense anyone could have created. He compares Candace's storytelling approach to Dan Brown, mixing real history with fiction so well that some people can't tell where the truth ends and imagination begins. Russell Brand's resurfacing commentary on MKUltra becomes another jumping point, showing how real government experiments create fertile ground for modern conspiracies to thrive, even when current claims have zero evidence. After a sponsorship break, the host shifts to Luigi, the man accused of murdering a healthcare CEO, noting how he appeared in court freshly shaved in a neat gray suit to seem more relatable to a potential jury. The host carefully acknowledges that while the murder cannot be condoned, the public's emotional reaction comes from a broken healthcare system where denials and corporate decisions genuinely cost people their lives, raising the uncomfortable debate about whether violent acts committed in desperation can create ripple effects that save others, even though he stresses strongly that violence is not an acceptable solution. From there, he moves to the cartoonish yet horrific scandal involving Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is under investigation for war crime, level actions after allegedly ordering the complete execution of people on suspected drug trafficking boats in international waters, despite the U.S. not being at war and despite there being no legal basis for killing rather than capturing and prosecuting suspects. Lawmakers from both parties are demanding answers, pointing out that even if the victims had been drug traffickers, summary execution is not legal under U.S. or international law. The host highlights the hypocrisy of politicians pardoning known drug traffickers while simultaneously killing suspected ones at sea, warning how dangerous it becomes when a government begins justifying extrajudicial killings under vague labels like narco-terrorism. Critics argue the legal foundation provided for these operations is flimsy, classified, and unconvincing, raising concerns that essential evidence, like seizing the boats or securing testimony, was avoided precisely because it would expose the operations as unlawful. Finally, he turns briefly to Donald Trump, noting calls for the former president to release MRI records and teasing Trump's cocky response aboard Air Force One as the show ramps up for even more updates heading into the next segment. The latest updates in the world of politics, celebrity drama, and shocking legal cases continue to unfold, And there's no shortage of stories to dissect, analyze, and discuss, starting with Candace Owens, whose presence in the public eye continues to spark controversy, curiosity, and at times, outright criticism, as she prepares to go live later today. Her commentary has now reached a point where even long-standing conservative allies and commentators are questioning her choices, her alliances, and the trajectory of her influence, with people like Patrick Bet-David, Vinny Oshana, and other voices in the Republican commentary community openly scrutinizing her relationships, her claims, and the way she positions herself within political discourse, highlighting the tension between her cultural prominence and the skepticism many feel about her intentions or the validity of her assertions, which have ranged from conspiracy theories to claims of assassination attempts orchestrated by foreign governments. In the midst of this, we see FBI Director Kash Patel making headlines not for actions on the field but for his insistence on image and presentation, arriving at Provo, Utah, following the assassination of Charlie Kirk and refusing to leave the plane without a specific FBI raid jacket complete with Velcro patches. A seemingly minor detail that nonetheless reflects the degree to which optics, perception, and personal branding are prioritized even in moments of national security and high-stakes investigations, and reports from sources like Alpha 999, as well as active and retired FBI agents, paint a picture of a scene where personnel who were actively responding to the aftermath of Kirk's death were momentarily diverted to satisfy Patel's clothing requirements, highlighting the sometimes absurd intersection of personal ego and official responsibility. Candace Owens, meanwhile, faces her own share of scrutiny as allegations and claims swirl around her. Statements including supposed plots and whistleblower revelations regarding French and Israeli involvement in assassination attempts. Yet much of this remains unverified, voice-modulated, and unconfirmed, which demonstrates the challenges of parsing truth from speculation in a digital age where stories go viral before facts are confirmed. She has, over the years, managed to maintain a massive following by leveraging a mixture of conspiracy, cultural critique, and direct challenge to mainstream narratives, creating both a niche market and a broad audience that simultaneously elevates her platform while also isolating her from established allies, as seen in her conflicts with figures like Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, The Daily Wire, PragerU, Steven Crowder, Megyn Kelly, and others, which raises fundamental questions about loyalty, friendship, and the cost of maintaining a controversial public stance in a hypervisible media environment, leaving observers to ask who genuinely stands with her beyond digital armies of followers and social media amplification. Commentators and journalists alike, such as Colonel Kurtz, have noted that while Candace's conspiracy-laden commentary can be preposterous in parts, her influence and cultural significance are undeniable, as she has altered the consumption patterns of mainstream audiences, blending historically accurate events with speculative connections in ways that captivate millions. And while the motivations behind following or reporting on her can range from genuine interest to strategic media gain, the impact she has on political and social discourse is substantial, raising questions about the nature of truth, influence, and the mechanisms through which ideas spread in contemporary society. Moving from Owens to other newsworthy figures, Luigi Magnan's court appearances have similarly attracted attention, particularly in the context of his alleged murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, with observers noting how attire, presentation, and demeanor in court can influence perceptions of credibility, likability, and innocence, a factor that has led his legal team to request business casual clothing and a composed presentation to jury members, underscoring how legal strategy often extends beyond arguments and evidence to include psychological impression management, especially in high-profile cases where public opinion and media coverage can intersect with courtroom proceedings, and while the moral and legal implications of Magnan's alleged actions remain serious, the discussion surrounding his case also touches on broader societal issues such as inequities in healthcare, frustrations with bureaucratic systems, and the lengths to which individuals may go when they perceive injustice or inefficiency. A reality that, while not condoning violence, illuminates the complex interplay of personal action, societal pressure, and systemic shortcomings. Alongside these developments, Pete Hegatha's controversial online content has sparked debate over the line between satire, AI-generated media, and accusations of war crimes, particularly in relation to depictions of fictionalized characters committing acts of violence in the Caribbean under the guise of counter-narcotics operations, raising ethical and legal questions about the portrayal of military action the responsibilities of content creators, and the interpretation of historical or ongoing events through digital media, with journalists and commentators calling for greater transparency, accountability, and evidence to substantiate claims of extrajudicial killings, as illustrated by investigations, into follow-up strikes and the treatment of surviving individuals who were released without prosecution, highlighting tensions between policy, legality, and human rights, as well as the potential for misuse of military power under executive authority, an issue amplified by recent pardons and selective enforcement actions that blur the boundaries between lawful enforcement and political favoritism. At the same time, public figures like Donald Trump remain central to the news cycle, with demands for the release of medical records, including MRI scans and commentary on the interpretation of those records drawing both scrutiny and ridicule, as his responses mix humor, deflection, and personal assurances of health, reinforcing his distinctive approach to media interactions and public perception management, while also highlighting the ongoing intersection of politics, media, and personal branding in the shaping of public discourse, a dynamic mirrored in other celebrity and influencer arenas. In entertainment news, Millie Bobby Brown's reflections on her working relationships on the set of Stranger Things provide insight into the dynamics of professional environments where young actors mature over long-term projects, with her assertions about safety, mentorship, and personal growth demonstrating the complexities of balancing personal experience with public narratives, particularly when earlier allegations or rumors of bullying are revisited or reinterpreted, illustrating the nuanced human stories behind widely consumed media productions. Meanwhile, entrepreneurial endeavors such as Billy McFarland's Fyre Fest rebranding to Phoenix highlight the persistent challenges and opportunities in event promotion, brand rehabilitation, and audience engagement, as McFarland seeks sponsors, sells pay-per-view tickets, and positions himself for renewed success following past controversies, reflecting broader themes of reinvention, resilience, and the market-driven aspects of entertainment and cultural production. The broader landscape, as reflected across these stories, demonstrates the interconnectedness of politics, media, celebrity, law, and culture, where individual actions, public perception, and systemic structures interact in ways that shape narratives, influence behavior, and generate public interest, often amplified by social media and digital dissemination, where the speed of information and the blending of fact, speculation, and commentary create a complex ecosystem in which truth, influence, and storytelling are constantly negotiated. Across all these developments, from Candace Owens' polarizing influence and the scrutiny of her relationships and statements, to Luigi Magnan's legal strategies and the moral debates surrounding his alleged actions, to Pete Hegatha's controversial digital content and the questions it raises about military ethics, law, and AI, to Donald Trump's handling of personal health inquiries and media scrutiny, to Millie Bobby Brown's reflections on professional growth and workplace dynamics, to Billy McFarland's entrepreneurial ventures, the recurring themes of perception, narrative control, accountability, and influence are evident, highlighting how individuals navigate complex social, legal, and cultural landscapes and emphasizing the necessity for critical engagement, informed skepticism, and contextual understanding in assessing the myriad stories that dominate headlines and social feeds. Collectively, these events underscore the contemporary reality in which media consumption, public opinion, and individual actions are intertwined, demonstrating that in a hyper-connected society, personal branding, legal presentation, political positioning, and cultural influence are not merely isolated phenomena but rather components of a broader ecosystem where each action, statement, and appearance contributes to shaping both immediate and long-term perceptions, reactions, and consequences. A reality that requires careful consideration, thoughtful analysis, and continuous attention to the details, motivations, and contexts that define the public narratives we encounter daily.